So I'm not Nilanjan Sirkar. I'm Kobe Sonnenschein. Nilanjan is a postdoc that is working with me, and also Walter Tangarife, who is, by the way, from Columbia. So the three of us, are in charge of this small project, which is discussing the application of holography to the theory of information. So I must tell you in advance, I'm not an expert in this field at all. I'm a newcomer. I'm a student in that. But I decided to present this paper that we wrote just to encourage you to enter new fields and new directions and explore new domains. I personally, again, as I said, not as an expert, but as an outsider, it seems to me that the application of holography and string theory to information theory has a bright future. It's a promising direction, and I recommend people to follow it. Now, the way that usually I enter a direction is that I'm picking, rather than studying whatever was done before, I'm picking some concrete question and I'm trying to resolve it, and by that, I'm studying what other people did before me. Okay, so we'll apply this holographic mutual information to certain systems which are different than the usual ones. So the usual ones are conformal, and in fact, it's always these systems which are described by ordinary Einstein gravity, which means that in the dual field theory, it's systems where the A and the C anomalies are the same. So what we have done, we take first non-conformal, and these are the DP branes. And secondly, non-relativistic. And that's what you've heard from Carlos about this Lifshitz scaling. And third, models that their gravity dual requires to go to higher curvature gravity, and these are cases where A is not equal to C. For instance, any theory on the boundary that will have fundamental matter will necessarily be with A different from C. In fact, the number of fundamental matter is just proportional to the difference between A and C. So this will be, the third case will be high curvature gravity, and the dual is A not equal to C. Okay. So most of this will be, yes. Say it again? What are A and C? Well, this is in one of these, so long time ago in the past, there were speakers here, Cassini and Anna Maria Font, and they taught us elementary. So, you know, if you consider in 4 dimensions, what are the possible deviation in quantum field theory of the tracelessness of vanishing of the trace, there are 2 types of possible. In 2 dimensions, it's just a Virasoro anomaly. Only even dimensions, 3 dimensions we can talk. In 4 dimensions, there are 2 distinct ways to get non-vanishing trace and relate to the Euler. And well, I don't want to go into the details, but just to tell you that if you want to really describe something in holography which includes not only adjoints, then you will need to take higher gravity corrections. Okay, so we have 2 motivations, and I'll explain them now. So everybody here has heard in one way or another about chaotic behavior and about the butterfly effect. And the question is, how do we quantify these notions in quantum field theory? I mean, in condensed matter, it comes for both systems, which are nonlinear system at 0 temperature will admit chaotic behavior, and also systems at finite temperature, thermal systems. What I'll describe here is only the case that we have a thermalization. Okay, so these other cases, well, that's the reason for that is that is what people were doing recently. They described this relation between chaos and black holes in holography, which correspond to theories at finite temperature. Now, in the language of the quantum information theory, becoming chaotic has the notion of scrambling. So you set some information, and the system, like a black hole, will scramble this information. And as you probably heard, the fastest scrambler is in nature. That is the claim of Lenny Susskind and collaborators, is the black hole. Okay, I'll come to this Lyapunov exponent in a moment. So now the question is, what is the measure? What is the order parameter? Oh, it's not order parameter, but what is the quantity that will test for us this idea of chaotic behavior? And so what was proposed recently, I don't know if by Maldacena and Schenker, I don't know if they were the first to do it, but they proposed to look on this quantity, which is the commutator squared of two operators of the theory, whether it's quantum mechanics or quantum field theory. So W at T commutator with V at 0, squared average at thermal averaging. And the claim is that when this quantity becomes order 1, then it means that a system turned into a chaotic behavior. For instance, if one take for V the momentum and for W just the degree of freedom, a coordinate, then we will get that this quantity is h bar squared dq to the dq at t to dq at 0 squared, and that is parameterized by this quantity. So this quantity grows exponentially, and the exponent is called the Lyapunov exponent. And so this is what we want to get information about. And related to that, there will be the time that we get this order 1, which we will call the scrambling time. Okay, so from here, it's obvious that the scrambling time is 1 over the Lyapunov exponent times log of 1 over h bar. And I want to make a distinction between this time parameter, which is the scrambling time, to another quantity, which is the more familiar, and that is simply the dissipation time. So if we take a system, again, quantum mechanics or quantum field theory, and we measure a 2-point function, then it will generically have a behavior of, where we take two distinct points in time, it will be e to the minus t over td, and td is the dissipation time. The dissipation time is typically shorter than the scrambling time. I mean, td is of the order of beta, and if we come back to what we have before, then this t star is beta log s. And in particular, we have systems of where entropy behaves like n squared, so it's beta times a big number. So system first has a scale which is the dissipation, and then later the scale which is the scrambling. Okay. Now, this quantity that I showed a moment ago can be re-expressed in terms of several terms. It's not an equality between this CT and this FT, but they are related. I can write several terms of this form which are equal to this CT, where here we take these 4 operators that we had in this commutator squared, and we separate them with e to the minus beta over 4h. So we stick here a factor of e to the minus beta over 4h here, here, and here, and we consider this quantity. And in some cases, for instance, in the 2+1 dimensional bulk theory. Schenker and Stanford computed it. And you see what it has. It has a constant part, and it has an exponentially growing part. The moment the exponentially growing part will be of the same order of this part, these two terms will cancel, and that is, in this formulation, that will be the onset of chaotic behavior. Now, there are some additional conjecture about this, the behavior of this function f of t, but I'll skip it. The point is that if we compare this result to what we get here, I mean, it's the fact that this there is this Lyapunov exponent which is bounded by 2 pi over beta. So no system will have this factor. And remember that 1 over lambda relates to the t star, which is the scrambling time. Okay. Now, so what is the goal of our exercise? Or in fact, as I said, it's not original, and these people, what they've shown is that suppose that you have a system, and you wonder whether it's chaotic or not, and if it's chaotic, what is the scrambling time? How fast it becomes chaotic? Well, everybody knows that when the system is integrable, it's non-chaotic, and when it's non-integrable, it's chaotic, but the question is, what is T star, okay? So if the system that you have in mind can be mapped into a holographic dual gravity picture, then there is a procedure, there is a way to determine, to compute this quantity T star. And that's what, following some other people, this is what we were doing. Okay, so the tool is, so as I said, long time ago, Cassini told us about mutual information. It really looks like a very long time ago, right? I mean, it was just a week ago, and we will use this mutual information or thermo-mutual information to discuss various systems and with this quantity to determine the onset of chaotic behavior. Well, these are the people that started this, and in particular, we will follow the approach of Leichenauer. He used this procedure that we will follow. Okay, now, what are we going to do? What is this extending? So, as I told you previously, we'll do the black DP brane, we will do the Lifshitz black brane, and we will do the higher derivative, higher curvature black brane solutions. Any questions?
Your answer for f of t was exponentially growing, but it was expected that at larger time intervals it became exponential.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what can be said universally about the behavior after the onset of the, well, once it's chaotic, then I think it's, well, that's the time which is, this is the dissipation time. But that's afterwards, there is a place where it becomes random. It's not something that you can really, well, okay, so let me say something. I think that I'll say it in few slides. Okay, so let's continue. That is necessary, but you know, one can generalize this Mandelsena correspondence to other background, and that's what we are using here. Most of the stuff is always done in conformal setups, but as I said, we will do different cases. Okay, I remind you also this notion that Cassini talked a lot about, and so entanglement entropy, everybody by now knows. We take space and we divide it into two regions, A and B, with a surrounding entangling surface, and we integrate over the degrees of freedom over B to get the density matrix, the density matrix at row A of A, and then it's just the Van Neumann entropy minus trace row log A, row A log A, which is what is referred to the entanglement between this A and B. Now, a really dramatic development of the scale of the developments of Malesena is this result of Ru Takanayagi, which tells us that we can compute in holography this entanglement entropy by minimizing the area in the bulk whose boundary coincide with the entangling surface. And so the minimum of this area divided by 4gn is, according to this prescription, which was later partially proved. I don't think that there is a full proof of that, but some proof was provided by Malesena and Levkovich. So it's really a very important result, mainly because there are, so Cassini was talking a lot about this Rényi entropy, which is one tool to compute this entanglement entropy, but in general, it's even very difficult to compute the entanglement entropy of free field, okay? Free fields have non-trivial entanglement entropy, and even that is a non-trivial task to do if you do the path integral formulation, let alone strongly coupled systems. So this is really a useful tool, and of course, in the simple cases in 2 dimensions that people do know how to compute it in field theory, of course, there was a match for well, it's of course a divergent quantity, but if you look on the universal part and so on, there is a perfect match between this quantity and the result that people got from normal, ordinary quantum mechanical methods. It was later generalized, but it's not relevant to us. What is more relevant is that this proposal is in the case that the dilaton is a constant. This is, of course, a manifestation of conformal invariance. When we are discussing all these cases, well, at least these two, then the dilaton is not necessarily constant, clearly not in the DP brane, and therefore the question is, what do you do? How do you compute it for a background which has also a non-trivial dilaton? Then, following Ru and Takayanagi, Klebanov and Kutasov proposed a generalization which tells you that in any other case, what you do, you go to the Einstein frame, which is, of course, a function of the dilaton. Going from the string frame to the Einstein frame will involve the dilaton. And once you're in the Einstein frame, what you have to do is just to compute, again, the minimization of the energy. Okay, and it was further generalized by Jan de Boer and collaborators to the case where it's not only Einstein gravity, but rather higher curvature gravity, and I'll discuss this expression later. Okay, now some other basic properties of this mutual information, which we all have already heard, but it's not bad to express them again. And so we have this basic definition. The entanglement, mutual information is the entanglement entropy of of A plus B minus S union B. And each of them, as I said, are divergent quantities. Once you take this difference, then it's ultraviolet divergent free. And there is this so-called strong subadditivity property, which Cassini showed and proved, I think, and that just tells us that this quantity is either 0 or positive. And well, and it measures the total entanglement quantum and classical between 2 regions. And there are some additional quantities, but I won't go into it. This was also shown explicitly by Cassini, how in holography one computes this this entanglement entropy part of the union. So it depends of if these two patches A and B are separated, then it will be just the area of gamma A and gamma B. But if they are not separated, if they are overlapping, then it will be the area of gamma A union gamma B, and they are not the same. In this case, in the later case where they're separated, they're clearly the mutual information vanishes. Now, let me go back to something else that we've heard a lot, and that is about the relation between black hole in holography and finite temperature quantum field theory. So we know how to write the general form of the metric of a black hole, not necessarily in 4 dimensions, not necessarily Schwarzschild, but and we know that the temperature of the black hole is related to the derivative of this function at the horizon. The horizon is set by the point where the function vanishes. And this is, for instance, the case of the ADS black hole. Now, a crucial step here, and that is in many of these works where relation between a black hole and these properties of information theory is to go to this Kruskal first and then to the Penrose coordinates. So how do we go to Kruskal? Probably Cassini also mentioned that. So we define this pair of, instead of T and R, we define U and V such that U times V is this quantity where R star is defined by dr star is dr over fr. And so we have the product and the ratio, and that's the form of the metric. So this is what was previously the part of the dt and dr, and that's the transverse directions. Any questions? Okay, so if we go then to a form of a Penrose diagram, then for these values of uv equal to 1, we will have a singularity, and uv equal to -1 will be the boundary of the ADS. So the picture that we have is that here we will have, this is u times v equal to 1, this is u times v equal to -1. So in the Penrose diagram, this will be the boundaries of two surfaces, and you will see in a moment what is the notion L and R here, and this will be the singularities. So now the key player here is the so-called thermofield double. So as I said, if you give me a field theory and you want me to calculate its holographic chaotic behavior, I first have to identify in the field theory this quantity which is called thermofield double. This has been used a lot, not related at all to entanglement entropy, in field theories at finite temperature. And the idea is the following. If you have some Hilbert space, then you take another copy of the same Hilbert space. So we'll have Hilbert space HL and Hilbert space HR. And we'll define the thermofield double as the sum over n of e to the minus beta to En, where En are the energy level of the left-hand and right-hand. And since they are identical, then the energy levels are the same, and this is just the partition function. Okay? Why do we pick this quantity? Well, I'm not sure that I understand it very deeply, but one aspect of that is that if you now trace, for instance, over the right-hand side, then trace over the right-hand states will give us exactly the thermal density matrix rho L. So we get, this is bra bra, and this is bra ket, and this is exactly the density matrix of the L side by tracing the right-hand side. Had we done the tracing of the left-hand side, we would get, of course, the opposite. Now, why is it useful? Because in holography, it now translates into two boundary field theory, two conformal boundary field theories, which are identical, but there are two. They are located on these two surfaces, and there is a black hole in the bulk of the two, okay? So this is the structure that we will play with. With that, we will be able to determine whether a given system or whether it's chaotic and when it becomes chaotic, okay? So let's see how it works. Suppose that we have in this A side, we take some segment of width L, and we look on this Uta-Kanayagi surface, and similarly with B, okay? Now, if there are small segments, and these two regions do not overlap, we will get, of course, that this entanglement entropy, which we calculate by the Uta-Kanayagi of A and B and minus the union, but the union is just the sum, so for that case, it will vanish. But if the size is larger, then we will get eventually that there will be overlap between the two sides. And this quantity mutual information for such a system is not necessarily zero. Clearly, there will be some critical lengths, L critical, above which it can be zero, and below which it's still vanishing. In this particular case that I mentioned before, it was computed, this is Schenker and Stanford, and for that, it's just the maximum of this quantity, log of sinh of pi LT, times the ADS radius over Gn, and 0. Okay. What? For what? For which? For that case? Well, that is when there is an overlap between the two sides. Well, this is schematic behavior. The area eventually will be, well, I don't think that I have, but the minimal surface will be something that does not go, it does not cross this midpoint. But, okay, yeah, but you just, do Uta-Kanayagi for that. I won't describe then the technical calculation. I just present the results. Okay, so that is a generic situation. We have this mutual information, and above certain critical lengths, there will be a non-trivial result, and below it, it's 0, okay? So now we go to this computation in terms of holography.
What's the meaning of this transition?
Of this solution?
Of this transition.
Well, you will see in a second, using the transition, we will be able to measure this. It's a tool to measure this T star. Okay? Wait one moment and see if you're satisfied. But what is the basic idea? I should have said it at the beginning. So what is a chaotic behavior? A chaotic behavior is that we have some trajectory, and we change very slightly the initial condition, and instead of following closely, it will be exponentially diverging from this original. That's the butterfly effect, okay? So what we propose to do here is to take our system, which is this thermofield double, and impose some perturbation on one side. So you add some, at TW, at the time TW, you add a perturbation of energy delta M, where delta M over M is, M is this ADM mass, is much smaller than 1. And then you solve for the solution, the back-reacted solution of the geometry now in the presence of this shock wave, okay? And what happens is that you'll get that this shock wave proceeds along this U direction. So U tilde and V tilde will describe the coordinates of the system to the left of the shock, and U and V to the right. And what happens is that we get that V tilde will be V plus this shift that is caused by the shock. So without the shock, it would have been just this picture that I showed you before. And now there is a shock which is produced due to the perturbation, and we want to determine the point where this alpha will be of order 1. But we can write, so far what I do, I just do the analysis of the gravity equation with the addition of this perturbation, and I'll get that this shift in V tilde is equal to V plus alpha, is expressed in terms of a quantity that has some constant. C1, for instance, is the derivative of it's the ratio of the derivative of the horizon area over the horizon area, derivative with respect to the radial coordinate. This is delta M. This is the entropy of the black hole. Beta is the inverse of the temperature, and e to the minus 2 pi beta times R star. R star I showed you before what it was, minus T, and T is the time that this signal was injected. Now, the way that we derived, I don't go into the details. Well, to be honest, the way that the previous author derived this formula is using Bekenstein-Hawking formula and the first law of thermodynamics. Yes? Well, it's a dual, not really to a system, but to a thermophile double of the system. So take the system has a given Hilbert space, construct this creature that I told you, which is in fact 2 copies of it, and that will be the holographic dual of that. You know, had it been just the thermophile double itself, it would have been of this form, and what this perturbation introduces is this shift that you get here. Yeah, so it is in a sense, well, it's somewhat misleading because you can think that you are treating here 2 separate systems, but it's not 2 separate systems, it's just one system that I take another copy of it, and with this procedure I can determine the behavior of this one particular system. Okay, so as I said, I mean, this the TW, which now I call T star, is the Zman. Okay, I'm now using Hebrew words. It's the time that this quantity alpha is of order 1, and if you use in particular a perturbation which is of the order of T, so the T is much smaller than M, then it will be the T star is what I told you at the beginning. It's beta over 2 pi log of the black hole entropy plus a correction of a constant. Okay, so it's not precisely this, but it's, of course, this is much larger. This behaves like n squared. This is just a constant, so this is negligible in comparison to that. Okay, and the bound is this. Okay. Okay. So this is what I said already, and okay, so using this shock wave, we compute the thermophile double, and that will determine us. But now, we always have to do it for L larger than LC, otherwise it will be 0. But even if it's L larger than LC, we see how it evolves due to the presence of the perturbation, because the perturbation, of course, changes the structure of the field theory, and it changes the geometry of the dual bulk gravity. And so what we get is that this function, the mutual information, is now a function of the original geometry, for instance, here, the length of this strip, and also this result of the perturbation, this alpha, which is a function of the time that we injected it. And so this is the quantity that we are interested in. And yeah, and taking this alpha to be order 1 is similar, well, it's equivalent to checking when, starting from L larger than LC, where the mutual information is positive, but due to this perturbation, it becomes 0. So the point that it becomes 0, this will be the point from which we can measure this T star. So measuring it using this quantity that alpha is order 1 or I equal to 0, it's totally equivalent, and in both cases, we get the result that I mentioned. So that's the structure now. In spite of the fact that we took L larger than the critical, after some alpha, which depends on the T star, or T star depends on this point, so vanishing of I or alpha becoming order 1 is the point that we want to determine, and that will tell us what is the skirming time. Now, this was used, as I said, in this BTZ solution, BTC black hole, 2 + 1 dimensional black hole. That's a very convenient laboratory. And for that, it was computed. So this is the expression for L larger than LC. It's non-trivial, and that is the expression. And from that, you can read what is alpha, and from it, you can read this T star. And it is this quantity that we had before, but plus this L over 2. Okay? So that is not the way that we will do it, but we will do in a method which follows the one that Leschenauer did. And now we go and do it in particular for the different cases. Now, let me remind you, how much time do I have? 20 minutes. Okay, I'll be done before. So for a DP brane background, we have that ds squared is in this notation r over r to the power 7 minus p over 2 times, well, so now we take a quantity f tilde of r dt squared plus dx squared. So this is the black hole in DP brane plus dr squared over f tilde of r. And let me close this bracket here, and here we will have this r to the 7 minus p over 2, and this f of r is just 1 minus some rh over r to 7 minus p. And there is also expression for the dilaton, which of course will be proportional to p minus 3, so it will be something like r to a quantity, I don't remember by heart, but it is 3 minus p, such that it vanishes for the ordinary D3 brane, but otherwise we will have a non-trivial dilaton. The important thing here, okay, so why is it non-conformal? It's the theory is dual to super Yang-Mills theory in different dimensions with 16 super symmetries. But the point is that only in 4 dimensions, the coupling of gauge dynamics is dimensionless. In any other dimension less or larger than 3, it's dimension full, and so therefore you have a dimension full parameter. The correspondence is not over the whole range of R, but there is a region of R. There is some condition that, so this is a work, I should mention that we did, I didn't mention all the others, so I won't mention also this. So, yeah, so as I said, for P different from 3, it's dimension full, and there is a region where this correspondence, so the region where you can describe the system in terms of supergravity is when this G effective, which is Young-Mills, and as I said, it's generically dimensionful times R p minus 3 over L string p minus 3. So when we are in this region, we can use. Now, of course, you may wonder whether we will clash into a region where this correspondence doesn't work. Of course, this will impose constraint on us, and we cannot do it now for the most general values of entangling geometries, but it will put us restriction. But nevertheless, with what we can do, we can determine what is T star. Okay, so it's by taking some UV cutoff and by taking an appropriate T. And this is the relation, which I didn't write, between the black hole entropy and the dependence on T. So for p equal to 3, it will go back to 3. And one thing which is well known from other things is that from p equal to 5, d5 and more, so 6-dimensional and higher dimensional theories have a different behavior. Okay, so you can see here the fact that there is some criticality at p equal to 5. In particular, holography is there not with an area, but rather with a volume. They correspond to non-local boundary field theories. I won't go into all this story, but we will see in a moment that for p equal to 5, the behavior is somewhat different. Okay, so in fact it's here. So here is the function, the mutual information as a function of alpha, and this will be the behavior, the blue one, for the ordinary ADS5 cos S5, and this is D0, D1, D2, and D4, and you see that suddenly D5 is totally different, and we have, but essentially there is no dramatic difference between, so we have the T star is a function of the black hole entropy, which is a function of P, but the general structure that it's just beta over 2 pi log of S, it's still there, and also the corrections are P dependent, but they are anyhow not very important. Okay, now the other case that we wanted to explore that follows this discussion that Carlos brought, and that is the case that we have non-Lorentz invariant, non-relativistic scale invariant. So we have that we scale x to lambda, sorry, that is a mistake here. We scale x to lambda x and t to lambda to the z t. And so that's so-called Lifshitz solutions. And for this gravitational solution, one can also add a black hole. And that was done a long time ago. And for that case, one has a different expression to the entropy. If the result will be that it will be T star times log of S, then the only difference is that apart from some constant, it will be this dependence on Z of the entropy. Are there any questions? Okay, so, well, here, of course, nobody told us that Ryuta-Kanayagi, which was derived for ADS5 cos S5 and later was generalized to a non-trivial dilaton, but in relativistic, is also the correct scheme for backgrounds that are dual to this. But that's, well, there are some arguments why this is still not modified. So we just take it, we assume that that's the case. If there are corrections, then they have to be added. So Z equal to 1 is the ordinary scale invariant relativistic case, and we have Z equal to 2, Z equal to 3, and you can draw more. So you see we get that it will take, well, to get this alpha equal to 0 or I equal to I equal to 0 or alpha equal order 1, it will now depend also on Z. And so this is digamma function psi. That's the dependence on z that enters, but these are just the constant correction. What is relevant is the dependence on z of the black hole entropy. Okay, now comes the last part, which there is a lot of technical details that are involved here, but I won't go into any of the details. I just want to tell you the structure and what is the bottom line. What did we get from here? So we said, let's see what happens if we take now these higher order curvature corrections to gravity. As I said, we have incentive to do it if we want a conformal field theories that correspond. Like if we take this NF equal to 2NC for n equal to 2 super-Yang theory, then it's a case where we'll have A different from C, and so on. We can do it also for n equal to 1, supersymmetric theories. And then in general, we talk about the Lovelock theory. Of course, one can talk about any higher curvature corrections, but what we do here is only to second order, and in particular, we take just the Gauss-Bonnet. So there are some arguments why Gauss-Bonnet is preferable for second order curvature corrections, and so this is what we are using. And okay, so now the gravity part is simply the Einstein part, cosmological constant, and lambda Gauss-Bonnet. That's the coupling times the Gauss-Bonnet expression, which is the Riemann squared, Ricci squared, and scalar squared. And that was also calculated, the black hole entropy for this, which is not only just simply the area. You have to use this world expression correction to that, but that's the result that one gets. So it depends on it behaves like T3, and it depends on lambda Gauss-Bonnet. And it was found by several authors that this theory is causally valid only if lambda GB is between these two numbers. So it can be either a positive as long as it's lower than 10 of 100, and it can be negative, okay, according to this condition. There is another recent work where claims that it is never consistent, and you always have to correct it by higher order curvature corrections. So the second order, truncation to second order is never corrected. Now, you don't see here, but one of the authors here is Maldacena. So it's, well, it must have, anyhow, that's the result. So in this framework, we started our game, and we knew that there is a region where it should not work, and in region that for positive and negative, which it should work. So this is the proposal of Jan de Boer, how to calculate the entanglement entropy for this higher curvature correction. So you see, you have this lambda Gauss-Bonnet times R, and also a term with the external curvature on the boundary of this surface. And but I won't go into all the details. I just want to present the upshot, and the upshot is that so this is lambda equal to 0, no Gauss-Bonnet term, and lambda equal to positive values. I don't know why I didn't put it. The behavior is very similar to lambda equal to 0. There is no differences. But if we take any negative number, and any, not even the value which is inside this region that I mentioned a moment ago, we get a weird and we believe unphysical behavior that there is a jump. So it goes like that, then it jumps to here. And so there are in fact two jumps, and here it stops. It does not continue. Now, you can check that in both cases, in particular here, the curvature is not large. So it's not an effect where we needed a priori to add this higher curvature, because the curvature is still small, but still it's clear that negative Gauss-Bonnet coupling does not make sense. And now, on top of these two previous results, we have this statement that it works for positive, and we didn't see this causality bound, but it does not work at all for negative. Okay, so let me summarize. As I said, we wanted to take some concrete exercise of computing a chaotic behavior, this scrambling time, and using holography. So this is the basic property that we have, that T star saturate. It's never faster than beta over 2 pi log of the entropy. And the tool that we were using following previous work were this mutual information. We found that the behavior is similar to, is roughly the same for any case apart from the case that there is higher curvature correction. And for that, I just told you. So thank you.